The FA Cup brings a couple of upsets while Charlton Athletic get back on track and we head into a really busy midweek. Welcome to the League One Lowdown. Hello everyone, welcome to the League One Lowdown here on the Deck Podcast Network. I'm Jamie Johnson and as always, Seb Jones, you're alongside me. How are you?
Indeed I am, yeah, very good, thank you Jamie. How are you doing, mate?
Yeah, well, I'm very well, thank you. I mean, I butchered the intro that all you lovely listeners won't get to see, fortunately for me. But we got there on the second attempt, which is always nice. And there's lots to talk about this week. We've obviously the FA Cup from this weekend just gone, and then we're going to talk into midweek as well. What do we reckon to the FA Cup as a whole? There's not been as many upsets as usual, really, has there? I mean, we'll talk about one of the bigger upsets, which is Tamworth obviously beating Burton, I beg your pardon. But it's not really had the magic of the FA Cup as much as usual.
No, I think that's a fair comment. Yeah, we've seen, like you said, we've seen a couple of probably surprising results, but on the whole, it's been pretty straightforward. You know, round two is sort of the next big step. Everyone wants to get to round three because that's when the big boys all get added into the draw. So everyone wants to get to round three, and actually quite a lot of the sort of League One sides have got through to round three and are successful in their games against other opponents. So, yeah, on the whole, it looked pretty good for League One. Some sides have sort of changed quite a little bit, but still managed to get a good result. So that's sort of interesting to see. Shows good squad depth and things like that. Some sides have sort of only made a couple of changes from their original league, sort of the team that started the last league outing, which again shows that they're sort of taking the competition seriously, which it deserves to be. So yeah, it's been on the whole been some good fixtures, and plenty of sides will be happy that they're in the draw for round three, which takes place on Monday, in case people aren't aware of that. So Monday 7 p.m. is when all the big guns get added to the draw, which is always exciting.
Exactly that. It's the last 64 now, so you obviously hope you get a big team. My team, obviously, Doncaster, still in. I had I think, a couple of years shaved off my life watching that as time of recording this afternoon. Bit of a stressful couple of hours, to say the least. But we're going to focus, obviously, on League One, and we're going to talk about, in particular, 4 of the League One involved FA Cup games before. In the second half of the show, we'll look ahead to midweek and some really big sort of blockbuster games in midweek in League One. But we'll start with the early kickoff from Saturday. And to my shock, and I think to the shock of a lot of people on Twitter and such, that it kicked off at 11:30 on Saturday. The Wycombe Wanderers, their game at Wealdstone. 2-0 it finished to the League One side, and they made 11 changes, which is perhaps the big talking point from it. That, I mean, we obviously expected Wycombe to win, and they have pretty comfortably 11 wins in a row, 13 unbeaten, and only 1 loss in 20, that being against Premier League Aston Villa in the Cup, of course. So they're on unbelievably good form, but for me, the thing that stood out is the fact that they can make 11 changes and still be exactly as clinical and useful as they are when they play the first team, Seb.
Yeah, in sort of my remarks earlier, I mentioned sort of sides that have changed wholesale, really, and that certainly includes Wycombe Wanderers. 11 changes, basically playing a second team, really, but they still got lots of quality within their second team, within some of the usual bench players that had a chance of starting. So I'd say very impressive to not only make 11 changes, but to sort of come out of that with, good credit in the bank through to the next round and a clean sheet with all that as well. We know sort of, Wealdstone are not, they're non-league, so they're not going to possess that much of a threat to perhaps what Wycombe have been used to or are used to in League One. But nevertheless, there's always especially when the sort of underdogs are at home, there's always just a threat and always a little bit of apprehension about these sort of fixtures. But Wycombe did the job on Wealdstone. 2-0. The first goal, if you've not seen it, definitely recommend sort of catching this Bez Labala free kick just sort of a couple of yards from the edge of the penalty box, and he curled it superbly, really, into the top corner, and
Nearing
then
off the bar, yeah.
Yeah, off the bar, yeah. And then Coney with the second one, obviously continuing his fine form. So yeah, sort of two players. Labala isn't their main striker and hasn't sort of started many games this season, but sort of proving his quality. And Coney, who has been starting quite a lot of games for them, then proving his quality as well. Continuing his form as I mentioned. So yeah, professional performance for Wycombe. I agree with you in terms of the early kick-off time. To have it start at 11:30 is absolutely bizarre. I was trying to think something to defend it, but there isn't really.
It's a proper Sunday league kick-off time, isn't it?
I guess there's
really
a 3 p.m. The 3 p.m. blackout, which is from 2:45 to 5:15. But even if you start at 12:30, then you're probably done by 2:30. I guess then the risk is if it goes penalties or anything like that. So maybe that's why they've sort of had an extra hour, because extra time and penalties to be played. So maybe that is the reason why. Not that I'm trying to defend it, but maybe that is why. But at 11:30 is ridiculously early, really. But yeah, Wycombe didn't sort of get carried away by, although weren't fazed by the early start, should we say?
Yeah, and I think one of the things they said on commentary was sort of like the pre-match meal and that sort of thing was at 8 a.m. I think I remember that right off the commentary, which tells you all you need to know in terms of it being a really quite
Bizarre,
silly kick-off time. To bounce off what you said about Coney as well, he's 12th in 24 games this season, and obviously he's in absolutely fine form, and they made a big deal out of him on the punditry on ITV. That game was, and rightfully so. I mean, he's doing really well. This season has been the real talisman of a Wycombe team who are right up there at the top, and we'll look ahead quite briefly to their game on Tuesday away at Exeter later on. But in terms of the FA Cup for them, it's really just job done. You mentioned professional performance. That's exactly the word for it, really. It's getting there, kept a clean sheet, scored a couple of goals, and it's a really in and out, really easy win in the grand scheme of things. Even if Wealdstone probably should have scored quite early on, they missed what you would describe as a sitter. But alas, Wycombe got there in the end. We'll move on to perhaps a subject you don't want to talk about, Seb.
Yeah, do we have
in the
to?
game you were at, which is obviously Barnsley, 0-0 against Bristol Rovers, and then a loss on penalties. Before I hand over to you, just to read some of the stats. I mean, I have to make sure I've got them right. They're that bonkers, really. 30 shots to 6 in Barnsley's favour, 9 on target to 1, 15 corners to 5, and then 58% possession too. But it all finished 0-0, and you lost on penalties.
We just can't hit a barn door, Jamie. It's probably the simplest way of putting it. Yeah, as you said, to have that many chances, 30 shots, 9 on target. Yeah, we just can't score. I was there. I was so frustrated, as for many of the Barnsley fans in the ground, that they're creating good opportunities, getting the balls into the box, passing it nicely, good periods of play, but the final shot just isn't there, or it is there and it's straight at the keeper, or it's an easy save. We weren't testing the keeper. It was Griffiths in the Bristol Rovers goal, and he had a blinder. To be fair, some of the stuff was straight at him, in fairness, but sometimes he did have to work harder to stop the ball going in the back of his net. But yeah, we can't hit a barn door. Is a simple way of putting it. We cannot seem to score for the life of us. We've had 3 home games now in the space of a week. Defeat to Wigan in League One, a midweek draw to Charlton in League One, and then an FA Cup defeat to Bristol Rovers. So it's actually 1 point from a possible 9 in the last week in 3 home matches. So it's actually pretty poor when you put it like that. So yeah, not a good performance to cap off, and not a very good week. Is sort of looking at the big picture as well.
Yeah, I mean to sort of affect on the big picture. Do you think it is the issue performances, or is it? I mean, you look at this and you think it's perhaps unlucky that you're not going to get very many games, if any, really, in the season where you have as many chances and don't put it in the back of the net. and eventually that's just going to turn around. I mean, we'll mention Lincoln next up, just to sort of prelude that in terms of they've not been able to hit a Barndovi, a banjo, and then they put 4 goals past Crawley here. Do you think it's going to be a situation like that where it's don't panic, we're playing good football, we're getting in good positions, we're creating chances? That's the hard bit. You're just not putting them in the back of your net.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to sort of describe performance. You're right, in terms of performance was good, and chances were created, which is better than what we have seen in recent weeks. I think there is an element of bad fortune for this, really, to have that many chances and to not go in. But clearly, sort of, the goalkeeper Griffiths was having a bit of a blinder really all day, all game, stopping everything. But yeah, I don't know, because we create chances, we're taking these chances, but they're just not going in. The amount of crosses that came to the box and either the headers were straight to the gloves, or the headers were just over the crossbar, or shots from distance. Barnsley had quite a few of them. Fabricelli, when he came off the bench, Humphreys had quite a few. His shot was just off the post. Akali as well had a couple of efforts from distance, but they were sort of, none of them really quite got the power under it. So, it ended up just being straight at the goalkeeper. So, yes, there probably is an element of misfortune in so many chances and none to sort of create the difference. But also, I don't know. These are League One players, and they should just need one chance and to score. But to have 30 and to not score at all is quite concerning. And I don't know if it's part of a bigger problem. We've been poor at home all season. I don't know if that's a part of it, but yeah, singularly, if we take the game just by itself, yes, an element of misfortune, but also there's no real excuses for it, really. When you have that many chances, it's hard to sort of find something to. It's hard to find a reason to justify it.
It's hard to put a finger on it, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see when it turns around. I mean, obviously you've got a difficult game in midweek away at Wrexham, which is no easy place to go,
and then home against Birmingham the Saturday as well.
Yeah, and the away form has been sort of the element keeping you at least in the right trajectory at home all season. Like you mentioned there at Oakwell, it's not been pleasant viewing. So it'd be interesting to see when that turn around, if it does turn around really, in the next few weeks. And I'm sure we'll talk about Barnsley next week with that big game, obviously, against Birmingham. You mentioned the one after next. Go on, Seb.
Yeah, it's just worth noting as well, just found on Barnsley, obviously lost it in the penalty shootout. Actually, the usual taker, Adam Phillips, was first to step up and he missed his penalty, which I think just got the Reds off to a bad start, really. Bristol Rovers capitalised and won the game on penalty. And, fair play sort of hung on for a draw and for the penalty shootout, and they got their look in the penalty shootout. So, yeah, but rare to see Adam Phillips miss a penalty.
Yeah, no sour grapes at all there, Seb.
Not at all, promise.
Fantastic. So we'll move on to a team.
Let's move on. Yeah, let's move on.
We'll move on to a team. You're hitting touch my segue. A team that can put the ball in the back of the net, at least this week. And that's Lincoln, obviously. A 7-goal thriller away at Crawley Town. And Crawley were 2-0 up inside 15 minutes. And it looked like those same problems were going to come back to haunt Lincoln, that they can't put the ball in the back of the net. They can't really keep them out at the minute. But eventually they turned it round for 4-2, did concede at the end, which set up that little bit of a frantic, a dramatic finish, probably the best word for it. But they got the job done in the end. Jack Moylan, I don't know if you've seen the goals, but his goal was a lovely little flick, sort of quite a cheeky little finish. Eric Rings is the one that's got most attention, a real screamer of a goal in off the bar. McCarmer, I think, is another one to sort of bring out of this as in terms of a talking point, in the fact that he's sort of the crowd's, not the crowd, but the support has sort of been on his back recently in terms of his poor performances, really. I mean, it's been unjustified in a way because he's become a little bit of a scapegoat, but justified in the fact that he's not been putting the ball at the back of the net and not making the most of chances, even if he's far from the only one. The other goal from Paulie O'Connor, he was the one who got that comeback up and running, the captain. So it's a nice monkey off his back for McCarmer in terms of just getting a goal and a win as well. And scoring 4 goals in the game, perhaps you'd expect it to be a bit of an easier ride. But Lincoln are through, which obviously they'll be happy about. And Seb, the important bit for me was the fact that they've scored some goals in this one.
Well, yeah, and scored quite a few of them as well. I mean, to go 2-0 down inside the first 15 away from home, I guess ordinarily would be sort of game over, really. But to show the character, to show the determination to come back to score 4, and in the manner that they did, you've gone through nicely there, the different goals that were scoring in different manners, but all of an entertaining nature. It's great for them, really. And like you said, that they've not been able to put the ball in back in net over the past few weeks, but to do so emphatically today in the FA Cup is amazing for them, really. And they can definitely use that. It will build up the confidence going forward into the league encounters in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, they needed it, really. Tom Shaw, one of those, is the assistant manager, did the one of the first team coaches, really, that did the post match interview rather than Michael Scabala, and he said they had strikers school in the week. He's one of those. He's good for a colourful quote, and that falls into that category, sort of a bit tongue in cheek. I beg your pardon, but they'll be happy, Lincoln, that they've got themselves back on track, goal scoring wise. And then we'll move on finally to the other game we're going to really focus on, and that is bouncing off something we talked about last week in terms of Charlton Athletic and their struggles. Well, since that, they've really ticked in the right direction. They won in against Burton, probably a bit scrappy, only 1-0, but this one they've absolutely cruised to against a Walsall team that are flying high in League Two, scoring a lot of goals in League Two, but it's a 4-0 win for Nathan Jones' Charlton away from home, Seb.
Yeah, well, they can't have any complaints about it, really. Against away at a League Two side, Walsall, which they can be difficult places. These sides, that, as I mentioned earlier, sort of, especially when the underdog are at home, they've got the home advantage. The crowd get behind them a little bit more, but certainly kept the League Two side quiet. Did Nathan Jones' side? Yeah, 4 goals. It's impressive, particularly There are a little bit of momentum building now, certainly in their past couple of results. So yeah, it's good to see 4-0 again. A little bit like Lincoln to score 4. It's great for them to see. Having had a disappointing previous few weeks, they're now back on track and an emphatic victory in the FA Cup to see them through to the round 3. They'll certainly want sort of a big hitter, I'm sure, but they might also want sort of a smaller club to then progress to get through them, beat them, and get through to the next round of the competition as well. But yeah, couple of goals from Hadmi, I think is the way you say it, and then Godden and Campbell. Obviously, Campbell and Godden, we know what they are capable of as well. Good to see a couple of 3 different goal scorers as well in the Charlton side. So yeah, an emphatic 4-0 victory, a clean sheet as well, and I'm sure Nathan Jones will be very happy after what's been it's not been the best for Charlton in the past few weeks, but they're now starting to get results back on track.
Yeah, and definitely that. And I know we talked about last week, we couldn't really put our finger on where the issue was coming from. We asked for comments, and we got one from Ian Mason, a Charlton fan, who put it down really to 3 factors. One we mentioned in terms of Alfie May being missing, and obviously leaving in the summer, not really being replaced. He mentioned that too. And then a weakness in set pieces. And then the main one was injuries. 9 or 10 first-team players out, Ian said, and Lloyd Jones, an important one, defender, in part of that core of injured players. So maybe that answers our queries from last week in terms of where that bad run came from. But now we've got an answer to it. The bad run's over, and they've put themselves back on the right foot. Yeah, exactly that. They got obviously a win over Burton, that not the prettiest, but a win's a win. And when you're in a bad rut and you're in a bit of a hole, any win will do, and they managed to get that, and then they've built on it really well, and I'm really quite impressed by this. I mean, Walsall, it's their first loss in 10 games. They're the joint highest goal scorers in League Two, so to stop them from scoring is really quite a feat, even if they are a division above Charlton. So a good win all round, and there's whatever angle you take on it, it looks like a really positive result, and they can build on that going into to midweek, which is obviously the thing they'll be wanting to do.
Yeah, of course. Using this as a bit of a springboard. You mentioned right at the top. This is a busy period for League One sides, and any sort of points on the board, any sort of momentum they can get is absolutely crucial at this time of the year. So yeah, although this result is in the FA Cup, they can definitely use this going forward in terms of league fixtures as the results come thick and fast in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, good to sort of see them get through. Professional performance, clean sheet, 4 goals, a brace from Ahadmi. And Nathan Jones will be a very happy manager, I am sure.
Definitely that. Elsewhere then, Stockport County, they managed to avoid an upset, beating Brackley Town 3-1. The same for Exeter, beating Chesterfield 2-0, the goal in each half for them. And it's their first win in 4, putting themselves back in the right direction. Hoping, like you mentioned, with Charlton, a bit of a springboard perhaps, that they can put themselves back on a good run of form. Leyton Orient, just about avoided an upset, 2-1 in extra time against Oldham, and a goal in that one. The Spurs
that's very, very unusual that we see one of those.
Yeah, exactly. The Spurs loanee, Josh Keeley, up for a corner in the 99th minute, a free kick, I think it might have been actually, a cross coming in, and he was the one who flicked it on, a really good header as well, actually. And that set up the extra time winner for Leyton Orient. Peterborough United won 4-3 against Notts County. There's always goals in games involving those two. And it was a bit like Lincoln's fight back. They went down early on, but came back. An All League One clash, Mansfield Town 1-0 at Stevenage. And then on Sunday, a couple of games in this we're going to talk about more in the second half in terms of pivoting across to midweek. With Blackpool losing to Birmingham City, perhaps that puts Steve Bruce under a little bit of pressure. As I say, more on that later on. And then Burton, they fell on penalties to Tamworth, and they really need something to turn around quite quickly. You were there not too long ago, Seb, for that Scarborough Athletic game, and it seems like things are starting to quieten down in terms of the positivity that came out of that result.
Yeah. Well, obviously, getting through to round to the FA Cup. There's always sort of going to be a little bit of a buzz, which there was. And then Burton impressed. There was a couple of promising performances following on from that, but as you said, seemed to have died down a little bit. Not being helped, of course, by there not actually being a permanent manager at the moment, despite sacking the previous one over a month ago now. So a little bit of a stall period, I think, compared to Albion at the minute. So clearly the momentum that they did have from that Africa result seems to have vanished a little bit. So interesting time for them for sure.
Yeah, a bit of a holding pattern that we'll talk about, as I say, in the second half. And then finally, the only other one left was that crazy game. Harbour were the lowest ranked team in terms of kickoff after Gainsborough were knocked out on Friday night. And they lost 5-3 after extra time to Reading. Campbell with a brace late on to seal that one for the League One side. So but Banana Skin avoided in the end. Sandra, obviously, the real highlight, former Spurs man, plays for Harbour. So a really sort of, that is a very FA Cup game, isn't it? An ex-Prem player playing for a random non-league team that you don't really know outside of that little circle around the club, and plenty of goals eventually, though. The Giant wins the day. So we'll head to a quick break. You're going to get to hear my voice again for the audible advert, and then we'll be back for the second half to look ahead now to Tuesday. This podcast is in association with Audible, and they bring you a fantastic offer. 99p for 3 months of their subscription. And for that, you also get a £10 voucher to spend on whatever book you want to listen to. It could be Richard Osman's Murder Mysteries. It could be Harry Potter. It could be the heaps of football autobiographies they have on Audible as well. And for 3 months, for 99p, you get 3 months of their service. Terms and conditions do apply, and you can find those below in the description. Welcome back then to the League One Lowdown here on the Deck Podcast Network. I'm Jimmy Johnson alongside Seb Jones, and we'll jump straight back in to League One, and looking ahead now to midweek. Quite a few games on Tuesday, and then the last 3 on Wednesday. The first one to really go in depth on is Rotherham United. They're at home to Lincoln City. Obviously, we talked about the Imps in the first half. They travel well. Wrexham last week is only their second loss on the road this season. Only Wycombe and Stockport have less. Whereas the real focus point is obviously in Rotherham's camp and their manager, Steve Evans. Now or never is what he called this game. And that's exactly what it is, isn't it, Seb?
Yeah, he's taking the words right of our mouths. Yeah, it certainly is. Been a disappointing season so far to Rotherham, but certainly has been a disappointing few weeks for Rotherham United and for Steve Evans. So he's certainly got to put things right. And if he doesn't, then serious question marks have got to be asked, really, in terms of his future at the club, in terms of his position. Clearly Rotherham cannot continue if they continue this rut of form that they seem to be in, which is really disappointing for the fans at the minute. He's put it perfectly. It's now or never. It's now, basically. If they lose, I think Steve Evans is gone.
Yeah, no, I'm going to agree with you there. I think it's something I said last week in terms of putting my neck on the line that he'd be gone before Christmas. And if he loses this one, I think, that's the writing very much on the wall. And it's not an easy game to have in that situation. You want this sort of now and never games to be against someone who's struggling, someone who is in a bad run of form themselves. But they've got a Lincoln team who are perhaps, not in the most amazing form, but as I mentioned a minute ago, pretty good away from home. And on their day can beat anyone in the division.
Yeah, and of course have just sort of won an emphatic FA Cup victory at the weekend as well. So they're going to have plenty of momentum going forward. Rotherham not involved in the FA Cup, so they have had a little bit of time, a little bit of extra preparation on the training ground that perhaps they would have normally had. Whether they use that to their advantage, only time will tell. But yeah, Lincoln have been very solid away from home. Rotherham have had a few disappointing performances at home. So yes, set for an exciting game, I think. But yeah, Steve Evans is the big sort of talking point from this will be Steve Evans. The fact he said it himself, it's now or never. He's never really a great sign when your manager says that. So interesting one. And Lincoln is probably not the opposition he would have liked, having said that. So plenty to look out for sure.
Yeah, exactly that. Elsewhere on Tuesday, Bolton Wanderers against Mansfield Town. Charlton at home to Crawley. Exeter City, they entertain top of the league Wycombe. Bristol Rovers travel to Leyton Orient. Stevenage against Northampton Town. Huddersfield against Wigan. That's an interesting one for me. We don't want to go too in detail in terms of sort of making sure we don't keep you all day on the podcast. But that Huddersfield-Wigan game is quite an interesting one for me, I think. They're two teams who are vying for sort of similar positions, if you like, in terms of where they want to be. And you never quite know how those games go. Wigan a difficult team to break down. Well, Huddersfield a bit hit and miss, aren't they, Seb?
Yeah, they are a little bit. They currently sit fifth in the table. Perhaps a false position, as is some of the other teams up at the top. Certainly Barnsley for one. They are sixth. Barnsley are sixth, but the position sort of is doing making things look better than perhaps they are. Huddersfield the same again, a little bit inconsistent, but they've won their last two on the bounce. Have Huddersfield in the league, that is. So that they've certainly had a couple of good runs, fixtures put together, and they as well didn't play in the FA Cup, so they sort of had a weekend off, which I'm sure they would have appreciated. So certainly the advantage will be with them. Wigan, you're right in terms of sort of the sides are battling for the similar places, but at the minute it's Huddersfield that are there and Wigan that are not quite there, but not far off. In fairness, Sean Maloney has done a good side off the beaten Barnsley last weekend. They had a pretty solid defensive display, certainly in that second half. So interesting game for sure.
Yeah, Reading, Cambridge, the other one, and then your side away at Wrexham. But they're not only at Wrexham; they're on screens across America, aren't they? This sort of VR however you want to phrase it. A bit of an odd one. You know a little bit more than me about it, though.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. So it's Wrexham hosting Barnsley. It's going to be the first ever EFL broadcast in shared reality at certain immersive venues in Los Angeles and Dallas. That's part of partnership from CBS Sports and Cosm. It basically means that you could be sat in a bar watching the game, but it's almost as if you would feel when you sat in the bar, you'd feel like you'd be sat at the stand.
Yeah,
in the
you sort of
stands.
see them you see quite a few of the Premier League games are like, where it's just a big wraparound screen and it looks like you're
Yes,
sat
yeah.
front row behind the goal usually. I don't know if anyone wants that view for a Barnsley trip to Wrexham, but alas, that's what's going to happen. The Hollywood strikes again in terms
Yeah,
of
and
Wrexham.
it's not ironic, but of course, no surprise, it's only the Wrexham games in League One that are being streamed. So the home game against Barnsley have been streamed. Then in January, their home game against Birmingham is being streamed, and then in March, their away game at Huddersfield have been streamed. So that they've only announced 6 fixtures that are going to be part of this immersive experience, 3 of which involve Wrexham, and 3 of which in League One as well. The others are in the Championship. So certainly an interesting one, and that's available in Los Angeles and Dallas. So for all our American listeners, get yourself down to pub and watch Wrexham Barnsley in the immersive experience.
What a load of rubbish. Anyway, so on Wednesday, there are the last 3 of the midweek games, and they're the other 3 we're going to focus on because they've all got interesting talking points in them. You mentioned Birmingham a minute ago. They're at home to Stockport. It's a really big game, that one. I think pick of the midweek for me. It's 3rd versus 4th. Birmingham have turned the corner a little bit. I mean, I say turn the corner. It was a real blip against Shrewsbury. That is the only way to describe it. It's not like they were on a downward trajectory. They had an off day, lost 3-2 obviously on Gowan Fanger's first game, but since then they've won a couple in a row. And Stockport, on the other hand, they've lost just 1 of their last 5. So it's 2 teams going in the right direction, 2 teams right up at the top. And for me, it's all about momentum, pushing into that Christmas break, the Christmas festive period, with a good backing of results behind you, and it's you got to beat the teams around you, haven't you? This is a really interesting one for me.
Yeah, it's certainly an exciting one. That's for as you said, both sides are in a good position in terms of the league table. You know, probably not as high as they were. You know, Stockport took a lead for quite a long time at the top of the table. They sort of dipped down a little bit. Birmingham as well were up there. They're I say dip down. You know, 3rd and 4th respectively, still very good for their positioning. But it's certainly for an exciting one. 2 teams that like to play attacking football, that have scored lots of goals so far this season. And both have got some good previous results behind them ahead of this one. So yeah, definitely we'll make for an exciting one for sure. And you bet it's going to finish 0-0. So no,
probably so. Actually, I mean, you go at these games, the big. The blockbuster sort of games, the most attractive ones, and they're the ones always the goals are happening. I know I like that's quite funny. Yeah, hopefully not.
You sound surprised, Jamie. I've said something funny for once, you know.
I know it makes a change, doesn't it?
Come on now, but yeah, it should be an exciting one. It's got all the makings of a good game. You know, certainly some good plays on both sides. We've seen Louis Barry impress for Stockport in recent weeks as well. So much so he's actually been tutored with a recall in January to some Premier League clubs. Whether that happens or not, only time will tell. And Birmingham, we know the quality that they have as well. The options up front that they have, Stansfield, May as well. So all good options. It should be one for the attacking talent, certainly of either side. I'm sure they'll be rubbing their lips at this one.
Yeah, we've set that up for a 0-0.
Licking their lips, not rubbing.
I was slightly concerned. Stick to the day job, this.
Yeah.
I think we're a comedian, and then Peterborough versus Burton is the next one to really focus on. And as we mentioned in the first half, Tom Hounsell still the interim manager at Burton. And for me, that is the main talking point going in. And for me, he just needs to be replaced. Not that he's the issue, but you've got to have a permanent manager. Over a month without a permanent manager is, I mean, it's dreadful. It really is. And it can't carry on like that for Burton, because you either give Hounslow the job full time, which, I mean, he's not doing amazingly by any stretch of the imagination. They're still bottom. They've only got 1 win still this season and 8 points from safety. Or you just get someone in. Like, I don't understand how it's taking so long, really, to be honest. I mean, we're not obviously got the inside track on Burton, but to take over a month when it's quite urgent, you don't sack a manager and then go, right, now we'll start looking. You gotta have something going on in the background first. Otherwise, it looks like a really poorly managed situation, which I don't want to give too sweeping a conclusion, but for me, that's exactly what it is. It looks like a real mismanagement to get rid of a struggling Robinson, but to not have anyone lined up, or at least have some sort of feelers out there, some thoughts out there that it's not going to take near enough 5 weeks to get a replacement in, because they're losing valuable time, and you get to a point where you're too far behind to catch up. And I think we're teetering that direction for Burton.
Yeah, well, he's only got 1 win during his time, and that was against Shrewsbury at home, who themselves have sort of struggled for quite a lot of the season. So I don't think we can really take too much from that victory, and a couple of draws in there as well that have been good, but it's been poor really for Burton and Albion. They lost, we covered it briefly at the start, but they lost in the FA Cup across the weekend on penalties against Tamworth, non-league Tamworth, so that won't do him any favours really. They need to sort it out really. To, as you say, over a month without a permanent manager, nothing against Tom Hounslow, who was coming on an interim basis, but they've got to be doing better really. The form just hasn't, and if they want someone to come in and turn them around, as you said, sort of time is ticking a little bit. We're approaching January, and some of the players could easily turn around and go, if they still don't have a manager, we've had 2 months without a permanent manager. I want some sort of security. I want to move away. So there's all sorts of problems that could arise if this continues on further, which the club will hope to avoid. But at the minute, they've still got this interim manager. Results still haven't been good enough. They're still bottom of the table, and it's not a great time to be a Burton Albion fan. That's for sure.
Yeah, and you gotta need that manager in advance of January, until you can go in, assess the lay of the land, and then go into January and go, well, I need this, I need this sort of thing in January, because otherwise it's utterly pointless having sacked Robinson just to leave them in exactly the same, if not a worse state than they were when he was in charge. So a real mess there, and it needs sorting quite quickly, really, before that really busy Christmas run that obviously will get talked about a lot, and rightfully so. I mean, games come thick and fast in December. You want a manager embedded before that rush, so he's got time to get his ideas across and get his thoughts across. And if that's Hounslow, then fine. Give him it on a permanent basis. Yeah. Don't leave it in this sort of limbo.
Well, exactly. Just to have some sort of security, I guess, as the club, knowing what's happening it's surely got to be playing on the minds of some of the staff and players, certainly for sure, at the club.
Yeah. Peterborough, obviously the other team in this game, they've only lost one of their last 5 all-competition games, but they do sit 13th in that bottom half. And I think the interesting stat that really sort of sums up Peterborough is that they've only Wycombe have scored more, but only Blackpool have conceded more. So that's Peterborough and Darren Ferguson all over, isn't it?
Well, yeah. We know the attacking talent that they have on display, but also we know the as proven there, as what you said, we know their defensive frailties at the back. So, we've spoken about Peterborough quite a few times in terms of just the overhaul in this summer. That in terms of new talent progressing through, it's going to take some time for them to embed. They're still getting used to play with each other. So, but that sort of stats isn't something we're not used to seeing with Darren Ferguson. That's pretty Ferguson-esque, if you like. Not that one, no. Darren, that is, yeah. Unsurprising, but interesting stat as well, to be fair. So I'm sure they'll more than fancy the chances against Burton Albion.
You bring the comedy, I'll bring the stats.
Exactly that, yeah.
There's just one more game to talk about, and that is involving Steve Bruce and Blackpool that we alluded to earlier on. They travelled to Shrewsbury. Obviously, got that new manager bounce with Gareth Ainsworth and their 3-2 triumph over Birmingham. We mentioned Birmingham have played twice since then. Shrewsbury haven't played at all. So they've had that time on the training ground that we mentioned with Burton in terms of being able to bed in Gareth Ainsworth's ideas. And they now host a Blackpool team who are in relegation form. Their last 10 games, they've got just 9 points, and that puts them in the table from the last 10 games in the bottom four. So not good reading at all for Steve Bruce and co. Is he in danger, Steve Bruce? Obviously, we talk a lot about Steve Evans being in trouble, and that he is. Steve Bruce obviously coming in a little bit more recently. He's not been in the job very long. But if this bad run continues and they lose to a team like Shrewsbury, they're going to start getting pulled into the wrong direction.
I don't think Steve Bruce is in trouble. I think Blackpool are in a troubling position, but I don't think that's directly on Steve Bruce. I think some of they've just been unlucky. You know, they've had a few injuries. They've had, probably perhaps not the quality of players that they would have liked coming over the summer. And obviously, that's something that Steve Bruce has inherited rather than sort of managed, if you like. So yeah, he's not to blame, and I can't see a world in that sort of a manager is sacked, particularly a manager like Steve Bruce is sacked. You know, what is it? 2 months after he's coming, 3 months after he's coming. So I don't think he's in danger of his job. I think he'll turn it around. You know, they're that great form when he first came in, and I don't think it'll be long until that sort of starts clicking again and the form starts getting better. So he's not in danger at all in my eyes. No. That is, and I think he'll be absolutely fine.
No, I agree with you. Actually, it's obviously an interesting talking point, but I'm in your camp that it'd be very rash to get rid of him. 18 games, 8 wins, 7 losses, 3 draws. So a 44% win rate isn't bad. Even if they're on a bad run now, he started off really, really well, didn't he? Those first few weeks, he was like a bit of a revelation for them and turned the place around. So he just needs to kind of rekindle that and try and push Blackpool back up. We mentioned a few times over the course of the podcast this season, in terms of you more so than me, the attacking frailties they've got, and perhaps that is just coming to show. But the defence isn't so good either. In that stat with Peterborough, that Blackpool being the worst defence, they've conceded 30 goals this season so far, which they've got to stop that leakage at the back. And that's through hard work rather than, it's not a quick fix to mend such a big issue. So we'll see how long it takes, but away to Shrewsbury is a sort of game they have to win for me. And the Shrewsbury team, obviously down at the bottom, got that big win with Gareth Ainsworth coming in. They got that new manager bounce we always talk about. And they feel to be on an upward trajectory and giving themselves a chance to get out of the relegation zone and up into safety. Not an easy game for Blackpool, who themselves are really quite desperate for a win, and for my money, need one in this game.
Yeah, it's both sides that need the points, really. But the both sides that are coming to this one sort of off contradictory form, really. As you said, sort of Shrewsbury getting the first one under Gareth Ainsworth, the momentum is with them. Blackpool, however, have been disappointed in the past few weeks. Yes, they beat Bristol Rovers, but that aside, it hasn't looked great for them. Both sides will want a result, and both sides need a result, really. In fairness, to sort of just get themselves out of trouble that they're in, respectively.
Well, exactly that. We'll be back this time next week on the deck to discuss another weekend. We're back sort of into the real flow of things as we get towards Christmas. But if you can't wait till then, and do listen to or watch Callum and Sam, they'll preview the weekend, look back on these midweek fixtures we've talked about. And in the meantime, like, subscribe, share the podcast, whatever platform you're watching or listening on. And we'll be back, same time, same place next week here on the League One Lowdown.